Welcome in to Locked On Phillies. The Phillies lose their fifth straight game, their second straight in extra innings. They're now the worst team in Pennsylvania, trailing the Pirates. And I'll say it again, it's time for changes. We'll break it all down in today's Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I am your host, Connor Thomas. Been talking Phillies baseball for years over on 97.5 The Fanatic. I'm now happy to be here with you as your host of Locked On Phillies. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. What do I even say to you at this point about the Philadelphia Phillies? Like, what could I possibly bring to the table that makes you feel better about this team? There's no stat out there. There's no storyline out there. There's legitimately nothing that I can bring to you right now that would be exciting about the Philadelphia Phillies. They lose again last night to the San Francisco Giants. They lose their second straight game in extra innings. It was a brutal, I'm talking brutal, nearly 5-hour long game. Didn't go 14 or 15 innings. It was only 11 innings, only 2 extra innings. But those 2 extra innings, oh man, they dragged. And the game itself dragged. And the Phillies end up losing. Just for the sake of those who didn't stay up for it, I'll talk you through exactly what happened and how they ended up losing, because, of course, I stayed up for it, being the hopeful fan that I am, or I guess that I am for the time being. I'm getting less and less hopeful by the day, but let's talk through the scoring plays and exactly what happened. And the Phils lost to the Giants 7-4. So the Phillies actually got on the board first in the bottom of the fourth inning. JT Realmuto grounded into a fielder's choice, scored Gene Segura, and Rhys Hoskins was out at second. Now, there was a second there where this was almost the worst call in the history of baseball. Rhys Hoskins slid late into the bag, but he slid into the bag. He touched with his hand. He stayed on the bag. He did not make contact with the shortstop coming across for the Giants, the second baseman who was manning the bag for the Giants. Either way, Rhys Hoskins had what looked like, slightly late, but a legal slide that didn't affect the throw whatsoever. And the field umpire, decided to try and be a hero and call an obstruction by Hoskins and called the runner out at first base, trying to call Realmuto out at first base to end the inning. It was absolutely ridiculous. Joe Girardi lost his mind. Rhys Hoskins lost his mind. The collective Phillies lost their mind. I lost my mind at home. And luckily, the umpires went and overturned it when they reviewed the play. The Phillies had to challenge it, of course. But they got it right on the review. It should have taken a review. But I guess the fact of the matter is no harm, no foul. And Joe Girardi was more animated than I've seen him since even when he got ejected earlier in the year, like his one ejection so far this season. Yeah, what that says is Joe Girardi's feeling the pressure. And he should be. We'll talk about it in today's final segment about why he absolutely should be feeling the pressure. But no harm, no foul, run scores, whatever. We know umpires stink at the major league level. They're protected by the union. There's nothing we could do. Move on. We're just going to have to accept that they're terrible. The Giants, though, get 3 back in the top of the fifth once Nick Nelson comes in relief. I don't know why Nick Nelson is the guy they still keep going to. This bullpen, though, we've decided is not very talented and whatever. We're just going to have to live with it. But Luis Gonzalez gets the scoring started for San Francisco with a double to deep right, scores Estrada and Casali. Casali, of course, who had that late home run off the Phillies in game 1 of this series. Then Mike Yastrzemski hits a sacrifice fly to center and gets another run in. And just like that, it's 3-0. All the work, Tommy Listell scored on that sacrifice fly, by the way. The work the Phillies did to just scrape across 1 run, well, it's all neutralized in the top of the 5th. In the very next frame, The Phillies have been notoriously bad at that this year, too. I've got to check the actual stats on it, but just watching the game, the momentum, even game to game, it's been bad, but in game, it's been bad as well. They'll score in the bottom of an inning, the top of the next inning, the team will score. Or if they're on the road, they'll score in the top of an inning, the bottom of that very same inning, they'll give up runs. Good teams understand that teams are going to try and answer and stop them from doing it. Good teams answer runs by other teams. The Phillies are not a good team. But, hey, that's not news to you. In the bottom of the sixth, the Phillies actually were able to tie it up with a JT Realmuto single to left field, another RBI for him, scoring Nick Castellanos. Rhys Hoskins moves up to second, and then Odubel Herrera grounded into a double play with Rhys Hoskins scoring. Bohm was out at second, but because the bases were loaded with no outs, the Phillies were able to scrape across a run there. But them and the Giants were both terrible with runners in scoring position. There's just too many problems with the Phillies for me even to single that out as an issue. Like, yeah, was it an issue? Was it the reason they lost this game? Probably. They were awful with runners in scoring position. But their problems go so much deeper than that. Anyway, they're tied at 3, and they end up working. They tied the game at 3 in the bottom of the 6th. No score in the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, and then we go to the top of the 10th with the Phillies and Giants tied at 3-3. Juris Familia comes in. Interesting thing, Juris Familia coming in. He pitched the past 2 days. I'll tell you a little bit about that in the next segment when we talk about Joe Girardi and what he did and why he's fully seems to have given up, or not so much given up, but he's feeling the pressure of his job security and why I think that's coming soon, that move that would remove Joe Girardi as manager. But anyway, Juris Familia comes in, just talking about the game here, and Jock Peterson reaches on an infield single to first, where Juris Familia just completely does not cover the bag. Wilmer Flores, who was starting on second with the ghost runner on second rule that they still use in Major League Baseball for some weird reason, scores on that, and it's 4-3 San Francisco. Well, luckily, in the bottom of the 10th, Alec Bohm comes through with a big single to center field, scoring Roman Quinn, who was inserted for Nick Castellanos to run at second base. Another thing there to talk manager-wise. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But tied up at 4, then the top of the 11th, Andrew Belotti, guy who should not be pitching at the major league level right now, comes in and gives up a double to deep right center. Run scores, gives up a home run to Jock Peterson, who absolutely nuked one. 2-run score, 3-4. The Phils go down 1-2-3 in the bottom of the 11th, and just like that, 7-4, a big late home run for the Giants. Stop me if you've heard that one before. The Phillies lose in extras. Stop me if you've heard that one before. And his team is collapsing. I had someone today, because I'm going with like the goatee mustache combo that you can see if you're watching on YouTube, say I look like it's my evil twin. And you know what I've decided? The Phillies have officially turned me into the evil twin version of a sports fan. I feel like this is my villain origin story, is covering and watching this team. It's just driving me absolutely insane. And you know what? Until they get back above 500, I'm going to go goatee and mustache from now on. Make myself look like the evil version of myself, because that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm turning into the Joker. Like that's literally what I feel like this team is turning me into. I believe, and then they fall apart, and I look like an idiot for doing it. And I feel like an idiot, and I stayed up late till 11:45 or whenever that game ended, 11:42, I think, so nearly a 5-hour game time. And we're having to be up at 4 a.m. to watch this team just lose. It's like my baseball team had a sixth sense of humor. You want to know how I got these scars? That's literally what I feel like as a fan of the Philadelphia Phillies baseball team right now. But hey, maybe a change is coming. I'll talk you through exactly what's going on with that in the next segment, and we'll see if the future of Joe Girardi, well, if we finally have an answer from the organization and they try to make a change after tonight's game with the San Francisco Giants as series ender. We'll talk about all of that coming up next. First, though, I want to tell you about our partners at BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the #1 source for all of your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. Listen, the Eagles are our only hope here in Philadelphia. Maybe you want to put a future on them to win the NFC East, win the NFC, maybe even win the Super Bowl. You can look at that and much more on BetOnline. And hey, maybe you could just fade the Phillies. Just bet against them every single game until they decide that they figure out how to win again. There's a lot of great ways to do it, and BetOnline is your place for it because it's your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, let's jump into just a quick preview of tonight's matchup, and let me talk you through why I think the Joe Girardi news should be coming soon if the Phillies are actually going to do it at all. Now, when the news comes down, you know what you'll get from me? Well, you'll get a great Locked On Now. I might even do a cartwheel. I'm gonna say that. Yeah, I'll do a cartwheel on my Locked On Now when Joe Girardi is eventually moved on from as the manager of this team. And you should check out Locked On Now. So I want to thank you as always for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. And Locked On Now's, well, it's podcast form of immediate reactions from our MLB hosts to wins, losses, big news like a managerial firing, all that good stuff. And what happens is they put it all together, our great folks at Locked On, and you get the immediate reactions from our hosts across Major League Baseball. We're the only organization that's doing this, that's getting you individualized, immediate reactions to each team's happenings and breaking news. And it's an exclusively Locked On network type of production, but it's available wherever you get your podcast. You can find it easily. So go check out Locked On Now for the latest updates on your team. And at this point, I'm hoping you're a fan of a team other than the Philadelphia Phillies. So your Locked On Nows can at least be fun. But I promised you a cartwheel, so maybe we'll get a cartwheel Locked On Now if the news I'm expecting comes down. All right, let's talk about what happened with Joe Girardi. And just a look tonight, Carlos Rodon takes the mound against Aaron Nola. That'll be timely we have Off the Poll coming up, where we still have to answer our Off the Poll question from the weekend about Aaron Nola and everything. Got a little pushback with the Memorial Day holiday there. But Rodon is looking at a 3.6 ERA. Aaron Nola, 3.56, very similar numbers there. 0.94 whip for Nola. Been very good in that category this year because not a lot of walks. Rodon had a 1.24 whip. He has twice the number of walks as Nola, which probably factors into it because Nola has actually given up more hits. But 20 walks for Rodon, 10 walks for Nola, a little bit more control there for Aaron Nola, and 10 more strikeouts for Nola. He's got 74 to Rodon's 64. But Rodon's been solid. He's only given up 3 home runs. Now plays in a much bigger park there in San Francisco with the deep alleys in center field. Nola has given up 9 home runs. It's really what's bitten him this year. When he's had his issues, it's been with the long ball, but we'll see what they can do. We'll see if the Phillies can go ahead and pull out the win in the series ender. But I don't think it matters. I don't think it'll save Joe Girardi's job if they win tonight against the San Francisco, I almost said 49ers, the San Francisco Giants. Here's why. Some of the stuff that Joe Girardi did. Well, we talked a little bit about it in the first segment, about his demeanor when that play at second base with Rhys Hoskins happened. Now, it was an egregious call. We've seen egregious calls in the past, like, I don't know, the Angel Hernandez call that was 6 inches off the plate to Gene Segura. By the way, I didn't even mention in the game recap, Gene Segura, times are just getting better for the Phillies. A broken finger in that game. He'll be out for a while. So he'll have to deal with a broken finger. He tried to bunt, tried to get the bunt down. It caught him right on the knuckles on the right hand. Of course, throwing hand, dominant hand swinging. Not good. He'll miss some time. And Joe Girardi said post-game he doesn't know what the answer or what the replacement, who the replacement rather, for Gene Segura is going to be in the meantime. We'll figure that out when they announce it, I guess when the lineup comes out for tonight. Anyway, but you haven't seen that reaction that you saw from Joe Girardi on that call yet. And it was the one of, like, my back is up against the wall and I'm going to fight for this call because if we lose this game, I feel like I could be getting fired after it. That was what that demeanor seemed like to me. So you can already tell he's feeling the pressure. That's clue number one that says, okay, it's getting close. They're definitely like putting his feet to the flames internally, whether he's been told it or whether he just feels it because he's been a manager, a tough place as a manager before. He was a manager in New York with the Yankees. He's got a feeling of what it's like when you're about to get fired. And that's what this feels like to him, apparently, by his reaction. That's what I'm judging on that. But some other stuff that just made no sense. So let's start with the Juris Familia thing. Juris Familia comes in to pitch the 10th inning. course, I don't love Jeurys Familia as a reliever, but he's better than some of the other options that the Phillies have. At least he's a bad major league reliever instead of being a guy that shouldn't even be in the major leagues. But he pitched the past 2 days. I seem to remember Mr. Girardi, if I may call you Mr. Girardi, back in a series with the Atlanta Braves just a little bit ago. Your closer not being able to go in a one-run game in the 9th inning after Bryce Harper hits a huge go-ahead home run because he had pitched 2 games in the past 2 days. What's the explanation? Well, Girardi said post-game that Familia's workload had been light, and he had pitched. It hadn't been like up and down the past couple of days. He just got out there, got his work in, and came back. So I feel comfortable going with him for the third time in as many days. Well, just pregame, Girardi had said he won't do it, and he refuses to put players in that spot. And then he goes out and he does it with Jeurys Familia, of all people, not even your best reliever, just Jeurys Familia, a guy who can get you into trouble and ended up not covering first base and allowing a run that, well, the Phillies eventually got back. But if he doesn't allow that run, the Phillies walk it off in the bottom of the 10th without no signal. Dumb to put Jeurys Familia in there, especially when you fought tooth and nail with the media about your need to keep guys rested. And to say, oh, well, he had a lighter load. Yeah, he pitched 1 1/3 innings over the past 2 days. Corey Knebel, ahead of the opportunity to pitch in Atlanta, had pitched 2 innings in the past 2 days. He'd thrown 32 pitches, as opposed to Jeurys Familia's, I want to say he threw 18 or 15 or something like that. So, yeah, nearly double the amount of pitches, but only 2/3 less or more of an inning. And I'll be honest, guys, 15 to 32 pitches in early June or late May, as it was, it's not what's going to make or break an arm for a season. Get him 2 days off after that. You have an off day tomorrow. He gets tonight off. He gets tomorrow off. Just like that, you're back to perfectly normal. But doesn't. I don't know, man. Like, of all the times to make the exception, after you argued about it and after you didn't do it with Knebel down in Atlanta, like, I don't get it whatsoever. That's going back on his word, and what he told us he was doing is his managerial style. Not good. The other thing, inserting Roman Quinn in the game, how he did. The final out of the game, well, it was Roman Quinn striking out. Not a good offensive player. He was inserted in for a great offensive player, Nick Castellanos. And why was he inserted in? Just to run the bases? If you're doing that, and I get Roman Quinn's fast, why wouldn't you insert him in as a defensive replacement the inning before? You know who's on the bases next. You know who's coming up in the 10th inning. Like, you're tied. It was a tie game in the 9th inning. At that point, insert Roman Quinn into the outfield for Nick Castellanos to get you better defense, and then you know he's going to be the pinch runner at second base. Nope, didn't do it. Just put him in at second base, forfeited the defense, and then putting him in at second base forfeited the offense for Nick Castellanos later in a spot where I don't know what more you could have done at that point, but like, you underutilize Roman Quinn and you underutilize Nick Castellanos' result. It's just the basics of managing he doesn't seem to get. I don't know what more to say. And to the people who feel like, oh, it's not all on Girardi, you're right. It is not all on Joe Girardi. I don't even think most of it is on Joe Girardi. But the fact that enough of it is on Joe Girardi that's putting them in a harder position to win games, well, that's unacceptable for this team and where it's at right now. You need a manager that is a positive, not a negative. And with an off day coming up tomorrow, that's the most important thing. The Phils are off tomorrow. Off days mean changes. Changes means new manager. New manager means goodbye, Joe Girardi. And the writing's on the wall. Win or lose tonight, I think he's going tomorrow on the off day. And I think that leads to, well, who knows who comes in, but that will be the turning point, for better or for worse, of the Philadelphia Phillies season early. When you fire a manager, it's a seminal point of the season. We'll see if it works, but that's what I think is happening, and we'll see if I end up being right. But that's just my guess. Now, next segment, I want to jump into your guess, because we had off the poll this weekend, and the guy who's going tonight, Aaron Nola, with a chance to save a game in this series, to get the Phillies out of their 5-game skid, to have a chance to take advantage of a Giants lineup that, while it's talented, you can beat this team. You've already shown it. You've gone to extra innings twice against them, and you had chances to win both of those games. Well, Nola goes tonight, and I had a question about Aaron Nola and off the poll. We will talk about that coming up in the very next segment as we round out today's Locked On Phillies. All right, let's jump into Off the Poll. If you're not familiar with our Off the Poll segment, what it is, it's a play on words, like hitting a home run off the foul pole. But what it is we jump off a poll that I put on the Locked On Phillies Twitter account at LO_Phillies. I retweeted from my account at ConnorThomas975. You can see it on the bottom of the screen here on YouTube if you're watching this episode. And what it is I just want to get feedback from you out there as the listener, as the fan, as a member of the fan base. I want to hear what you think. And I can't have someone call in because this is not radio, the medium that I was used to working with before I became the host of Locked On Phillies. So this is my solution to that. I put out a poll every Friday, and Friday's final segment is walking through what the poll is and explaining why I'm asking. Well, Monday, I read your response and I share my thought as to, well, what my answer to the question would be and why I feel like you picked what you did in consensus. And this one, well, this was 4 options, and there were 2 that were pretty close together. So let me break it down exactly what the question was for this week's Off the Poll. It was simple with Aaron Nola, and it was a matter of ranking. And so it reads, a quick poll for today's episode. Where do you rank Aaron Nola among MLB starters? And there are a couple options. You could either do top 10, top 20, top 30, or outside the top 30. Top 30 would make him be the best pitcher on most teams. Top 20 would be really the ace territory, and top 10 would be the elite territory like that. So that's kind of how I feel like that's broken down. Obviously, outside the top 30 would be like he's a number 2 or a number 3 or whatever you feel about him. And the winner was top 20, which is right where I would have put him. I'm not putting Aaron Nola as a top 10 pitcher in Major League Baseball right now. I can list a bunch of guys who I'd rather have than Aaron Nola, and that's no knock on him. Guys like Scherzer, DeGrom, Verlander, Walker Buehler, Corbin Burns, maybe even Brandon Woodruff up there. I'd take Zach Wheeler probably over Aaron Nola, given the track record, even though Nola's season, you could argue, has been a little bit better. That's where I'd have him, though, is top 20. And you look at it, that's good, because Zach Wheeler, you could argue he's top 10 in baseball. And I feel like that would be a lot of that actually maybe our off the poll for this coming weekend to see where he ranks, to see if the Phillies really have 2 number 1s. But top 20 to me means he's number 1. 42.9% of you responded saying top 20. Now, 37.1% of you responded saying top 30. So nearly as many people who think he's top 20 think he's a top 30 pitcher, which is still a number 1 pitcher. But that shows you he's right on the cusp. He's a low-end number 1 to some of you. He's a high-end number 1 to the others, but very few of you, only 14.3%, feel he's outside the top 30, not worthy of being a number 1 pitcher on any team in baseball, and only 5.7% of you feel he's top 10, which I feel is realistic, especially with his struggles the past couple years. So that's where he stands. But you have a top 20 pitcher in baseball going for you today. And I agree with where you voted. I think the breakdown speaks perfectly to how this fan base should view Aaron Nola and how the league views him. And I think we get skewed sometimes by radical fans who are like, oh, he stinks, or oh, he's a Cy Young winner. And he's never won a Cy Young, but he was close to it in 2018. Either way, it falls more in the middle. He's probably a top 20, top 30 pitcher in baseball. You'll take that every day. And he's got to step up today on the mound to give the Phillies a chance to salvage a game, because him and Zach Wheeler are going to be the guys that this team relies upon as they try and claw their way back from being way down in the division and even way down in the wild card race now. So that's what we'll have to look at. But that's off the poll. I appreciate all the responses on there. Thank you for checking in on that, because that gives me some interesting data to talk about and to base my opinions on as I go through and create shows for you on Locked On Phillies. That's all the time I've got for you today. Tomorrow an off day, but we may have big news. I'll keep you updated on all of that as we wait for what happens following tonight's conclusion of the Giants-Phillies series, and the Angels come up at the end of this week. That'll be an interesting series regardless, because some great players on the Angels, a local kid in Mike Trout. It's going to be a fun rest of the week, so make sure you're still locked into Locked On Phillies. Make it your first listen every day, and now make your second listen Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, Sully, covers baseball inside and out. You can get a taste of some of the good teams in the league by checking out what Sully's doing. He's got stories on the history of the game. He's got updated news on teams around Major League Baseball. Just did a great crossover with the host of Locked On White Sox to talk about them and what's going on the south side of Chicago over there. So if you don't get caught up with the league as often as you like, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. I want to thank you to everyone who rates, reviews, subscribes. If you haven't subscribed yet to the YouTube, make sure to do that. It definitely helps out, helps me put together a better show, and helps me know that you guys are out there enjoying it. So I appreciate all of that. And that's all I have for you today. I will talk to you all again tomorrow.